What's up, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Wizards Latest. I'm your host and DC sports fan, Ben Robertson, and on this page, we break down all the biggest headlines surrounding the Washington Wizards. So make sure you like and subscribe down below if you haven't done so already. Drop your comments with any thoughts you might have on the video, whether that might be questions you have after Summer League or about the roster moving forward. Would love to interact with you guys a little bit down there in the comment section. I appreciate all of the support. Let's keep it rolling here on the page and let's jump right in today. Want to talk a little bit more about the buyout situations from this past weekend. Which players are potentially going to benefit from those buyouts and maybe gain a few more minutes? How, again, it kind of opens up the Wizards roster and what questions still remain after those buyouts this past weekend. And lastly, summer league grades for a lot of the individual players have been a popular topic, of course, coming out of summer league in the Wizards community. I want to give you my grades specifically for the sophomore class that played in the summer league. I'm talking about the main roster guys that are expected to, make contributions next year and moving forward that also were on this year's summer league team. So again, let's jump right in. I appreciate all of the support one more time. And let's talk a little bit about Blake Wesley. Of course, the former first round pick, like Marcus Smart, agreed to a contract buyout this past weekend with Washington. Of course, was recently traded for along with Malachi Branham from San Antonio, and that deal that Washington sent Kelly Olynyk to the Spurs again trims down the roster just a little bit more for Washington. Of course, with those buyouts getting down to the limit required for next season. Looks like Wesley is going to land with Portland on a 1 year deal. And again, as I said in the open, this really just makes the playing time right now, especially for the guys coming off the bench, look a little bit more clear. With Wesley and Smart getting bought out, to be quite honest, it means AJ Johnson, who we've really talked about last week and even this week with some of the summer league stuff. It means he's going to get a bunch of opportunities, and if he maybe wasn't going to already, or if this wasn't sure of already, it's clear now that he should get plenty of time off the bench and kind of have the ability to run the show there with the second unit. Also, it means Malachi Branham might have a more open path to large playing time off of the bench. I do want to follow up yesterday's discussion just a little bit. We were chatting, or I was, and then, discussed it a little bit down in the comments with you guys about the veterans still remaining on the roster, and in particular, CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton. And really, what should the roles of those two guys be? Should they be starters? Should they come off the bench? I have to say, I would be surprised, honestly, at least to start the year, if CJ McCollum isn't in the starting lineup. I think maybe Chris Middleton is more likely to come off the bench with, the wings that we have. But I have a feeling CJ is going to be a starter, which is all right. And again, you guys, raised the point to me that, and, I've mentioned this as well, that, those two guys are going to be really just, they have so much valuable knowledge. They've played winning basketball in their careers. Them being on the court, in their own right and showing, our young guys the ropes and how this is what it's supposed to look like is going to be a valuable thing. My personal sort of thing is that if CJ McCollum starts and is in the starting five, does Bub Carrington go to the bench or does Trey Johnson go to the bench? I have to imagine one of them, has to, right, with your backcourt. And either one of those, for me, I pause at just a little bit. I, said yesterday, I really don't think I want Trey Johnson on the bench. I don't think he projects as a six man. If we want him to be a star, we need him on the court. On the other hand, right now we're thinking, everybody's sort of expecting Bub Carrington to be the lead guard or get his opportunity to be a lead guard here this year. So would that mean pairing CJ McCollum as his two guard alongside him? Really, either of those guys going to the bench makes me a little bit concerned just because I want to see them get their reps and get their opportunity to develop. Wonder, let me know down in the comments if it is one of those guys and if that situation that I'm sort of envisioning, or maybe there's another option that I'm maybe not, picking up on, or maybe, just thinking about right now. Let me know in the comments which one of those guys you would prefer to see come off the bench, really, out of those three, whether it's CJ, Bub, or Trey. What combination there would you like to be the starting backcourt next year? And lastly, I want to jump into my grades for the sophomore class coming out of Summer League. Remember, the Wizards were 2-3 this year in Summer League, wins over Brooklyn and New York, and losses to Phoenix, Philly, and Utah. So let's start with Alex Sarr, the former number 2 overall pick. I'm going to give a B plus, and simply, if it was just based off of his game 2 performance, it probably ends up as an A. But I'm going to give him a B plus because I was expecting, or maybe hoping, for just dominant efforts from Alex Sarr going into year 2. Again, number 2 overall pick, hoping he's taken those steps in his development and should look really good at the summer league level. I thought he was dominant at times, particularly in game 2, to be quite honest. Finished with 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 blocks in the first matchup against Kaman Mawak and the Suns, and then finished with 16 points, 12 rebounds and 8 blocks, a summer league record against Drew Timme and the Brooklyn Nets. The defense and shot blocking again was just ridiculous, so impressive on full display in both games. I thought despite the solid stat line offensively, game 1 was a little bit lackluster. Started off that game with an alley-oop dunk and then just sort of settled for just 2 3-pointers and really just wasn't involved in the first half offensively. Did like that he got aggressive in the second half and he carried that over into game 2, which he, was attacking the basket early and often in, and they weren't all going at the rim, but eventually started to drop and, had a tough and one late in the half and started to get going. And again, in both games, especially at times and especially in game 2, looked dominant, really defensively. I mean, we're talking defensive player of the year potential. I mean that very seriously, was sort of what he showed, I think, in Summer League on the defensive end. I want to move on to Bub Carrington, who I'm going to be a little bit tougher on. I think I'm going to give a B minus, maybe even verging on C territory, and a 4.5 assist game 1, and then 17 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists in game 2. Really, the difference is that when Bub's shot is falling, I mean, he's a different player. He was 1 for 9 in game 1 and then 5 for 7 in game 2. I loved his defensive activity in game 2, but again, especially, we got going off offensively, and you wonder if, maybe that helped out a little bit. You see that, kind of a lot. Big question, though, really, and less about maybe the up and down play for Bub and more for me, and we'll continue to discuss this. Is he a true lead guard, which is, what I've talked about? We're trying to figure out for him this year, and I'm not sure he quite showed enough that in summer league where you can say that, and that's really a big question for him right now. I'm gonna give Keyshawn George an A minus, and honestly, that really is based off of his game 1 performance. The 24-point effort there in game 1 against Phoenix was one of the lone bright spots, to be quite honest. And if you just look at where he is drafted, for Keyshawn George to continue to now show development throughout his rookie year and now going into year 2, I think that's really exciting. He was good defensively as well in game 2, despite, maybe not knocking down his shot the same way. Talked about a little bit AJ Johnson a little bit already. I'm going to go with a B for the simple fact where, again, I think he's found his role, at least for this year here on this team. He's going to get to kind of run the show with the second unit, be, just instant offense, just kind of be, electric off the bench. Sometimes it's going to be good. Sometimes it's going to be bad. Sometimes it's not going to look great. And sometimes you're going to go, man, wow, that was incredible. How did he do that? I think we're going to see, more of that with AJ Johnson, and hopefully, as the year goes, he is getting better and better. And lastly, I'm going to give Dylan Jones a C. And honestly, it might be worse if it weren't for that Game 5 performance with 25 points against the New York Knicks. It just didn't do much, to be quite honest. The rest of the week, maybe I'm, missing something there. Maybe, uh, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't see enough, to be quite honest, from Dylan Jones this week. Didn't play at all in game 2. Didn't only play 9 minutes in game 1, and then once kind of the main guys were shut down after the first 2 games, he got a little bit more opportunity, but really didn't kind of have a equal production until that last game of the summer league. So C is the grade I'm giving him. Let me know, your thoughts on some of those quick grades down below in the comments. Would love to hear from you guys. Would love to interact a little bit as well. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate all of the support on the page. And thanks for watching another episode of Wizards Latest.